All right. So today I've got the pleasure of speaking with Bill. Bill's one of our former students that just got the results in. And Bill, go ahead, let him know. How's it feel? How'd you do?
Oh, it's guys, the way I made my post on LinkedIn and Facebook, I said this is the proudest moment of my life. I'm a happily married man of 10 years and I have 6-year-old twin kids. And I can honestly say it's the proudest moment of my life. Took more work than anything I've ever done, completely worth every second.
Excellent, Bill. Hey, congratulations. Huge accomplishment, tremendous milestone. And this was your first time taking the exam. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I signed up for it 3 times. Unfortunately, with COVID, it got canceled for April and October. Finally got to take it for the first attempt. I came in prepared and I passed.
Great. And what part of the power industry do you work in?
Mainly substation design. I had about 8 years where I would do substation and nuclear and fossil plants, but now it's specifically substation. And it's kind of cool and it's rare. I do outdoor substation where most people that do substations do a lot of protection and control. And I did that for 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of funny. I feel like my career helped me with the PE because I've got the NEC type knowledge and the power knowledge, but also have a lot of protection background. So now you see why I really wanted to pass this exam.
Yeah, definitely. So when you say outdoor substation, so I'm picturing, driving alongside the highway, I see the real big, large, probably, 220, 230 kV subs, like maybe transmission level, big transformers, the big bushings on, the gas circuit
Yes,
breakers, that kind of stuff.
230 to, most is 500 kV, but yeah, just the major transformers, bus work, breakers, switchgear, anything you can physically see with your eyes, conduit, grounding. At work, I'm a grounding specialist. That's another thing that helped me on the PE is any question I seen that was grounding related. If I didn't know it, I made sure I knew it because I want to know everything about it.
Yeah.
So if I got it wrong, I never got frustrated. It was like, oh, this is just too difficult.
Yeah. Learning opportunity.
Yes, for sure.
So you work on the big stuff, the fun toys.
Dude, I love
My
it.
my substation experience, it's limited to distribution level voltage. So I worked in plenty of outdoor 69 kV subs, but that's it. No hair standing up, when I'm in the outdoor sub yard. But that's fun. I love sub design. It's neat. It's got a little bit of everything. So great. So let's back up. So you were originally signed up for the April 2020 paper and pencil. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you got the that notice that it was canceled, that big shock that affected everyone. And then you were told, all right, you got to wait until October, 6 months down the line. And you probably took some time off, but probably got right back on that horse. And then I think it was in August, boom, same thing. Regret to inform you, but it's canceled. And then all of a sudden, everything, I bet you kind of had an idea in your mind, this paper and pencil format that you're going to take. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like moving goalposts or changing targets. Now you got to focus on the CBT format. So talk to me a little bit about that. What was that like, having that canceled twice and having to kind of shift your focus to the CBT format?
I feel like I took the best approach for both tests. When it was going to be paper and pencil, I can honestly say if you on your website, I printed the notes, I printed my quiz. I felt extremely comfortable and confident. I really did. I felt like I was going to go in there and dominate that test. And then, like you said, when the post got moved and I seen it was on CBT, it's funny. I've seen people take two different methodologies where they'll, all these test books we bought wasn't around. They didn't know it was going to go CBT. So if I seen a problem that was completely in la land, where I'd have to pull a crazy book and really deep dive into it, I wouldn't do it. When it was CBT, I treated it almost like the FE. You got one reference handbook and you got your codes, and I put that on my screen. And I made sure if it was a problem I could solve with that, you might have to derive the equation. It might not say, Q equals this. You might have to reverse engineer it, which just helps you practice. But once I got comfortable on that, you got to realize you're taking the test with people that have the exact same opportunities. So I feel confident with that as well.
Gotcha. Excellent. No, great answers. How about, what would you say were maybe some of the challenges preparing for the CBT format? And I know it sounds like you kind of touched on it already, really just using the references that you have, but what other challenges when you kind of changed your sites, and what did you do to try to overcome those new challenges?
It's funny now that people have taken the exam, anytime you talk to somebody and say, what really shocked you? They go, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have expected this much qualitative stuff. And I kind of expected that up front. I knew that if it's a math problem and you've put in the work to study for this exam, I didn't think it would be, they wouldn't really try to trick you with math. So I went back through the electrical PE review. I was reading everything I could on transformers, motors, protection, just any type of qualitative problem, because I knew that's what would catch me off guard. Because that's, it's not going to be in your reference handbook. And a lot of people are like, well, you know it or you don't. Well, that's true, but you can you got to memorize it. That it took away that comfort blanket of, because when I was going to go take the paper and pencil, I had my two 4-inch ring binders. That's how big they were to fit all of the electrical PE review coursework in those. And that was my holy grail bread and butter. So I plan on just having that on my desk. But I obviously have it on my bookshelf here, but I think I was going to take 38 books. So I went from 38 books and 2 binders down to, our 70 or 80 page reference handbook. So I really tried to hammer home the qualitative depth and knowledge for those type problems.
Excellent. So really focusing on the qualitative aspect and kind of almost sounds like kind of maybe reading in between the lines of the reference handbook.
For sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. I looked at the reference handbook, and if it didn't mention particular things like I just didn't expect a really in-depth qualitative, like I had in my mind there, harmonics question. I wouldn't spend 4 hours really learning every single qualitative thing about harmonics, but it's like delta Y transformers, I could easily see a problem saying, how should you connect CTs? There's no math involved, and it's not going to be probably in the reference handbook, but it's something they think you as a PE should know.
Gotcha. No, that's a great point. What else? How about, how'd you find out about us? How'd you find out about electricalpereview.com, the program we offer, and about during that whole point of studying, almost for a full year now, about what point in that process did you end up enrolling?
I was very fortunate. This is December 2020, and I started studying in October of 19, and I was about to go on a cruise. And I know most people would think, I'm going on vacation, I don't want to do anything real life, this is my relaxation time. I'm the weird person that it relaxes me and I enjoy learning. So I was just going to get some kind of PE material where if I'm by myself, I can flip through some pages. So it's actually on YouTube, and I literally Googled on YouTube, how to pass the PE exam, strategy for passing the PE exam. And it's kind of funny, if you do that, most of the time you'll come up with a lot of civil stuff. I didn't think about Googling how to pass the PE electrical. And I've seen your video series on how to pass the PE exam, and I felt alone. I work with a lot of engineers, but anybody else watching this video, I'm sure you understand that a lot of people are just completely fine never getting their PE. So when I was taking, I didn't really have a buddy that's electrical that I studied with. So when I listened to these videos, it literally felt like you were going through the experience with me, or at least you're telling me your experience, and we're doing it together kind of deal. And especially in the live classes, every time you said we're in this together, we're doing this as a group, I feel that community feel really, really helps keep your sanity instead of doing it by yourself.
Gotcha. And then about what point in the journey did you end up enrolling during that process?
I think it was that October. I knew I was going on that cruise, and I looked, and I remember I reached out to the program, and it was funny because I felt y'all like one day before I went on the cruise. I knew I'd have a tablet on the phone with me. I was like, if I sign up for the course now, some courses they might have to run some administrative work, they might have to process some things. They might say it'll be a week or two, but luckily for the electrical PE review, it's like, well, I mean, if you enroll today, you'll have access today.
Yeah.
And that was just absolutely perfect because I literally signed up the day before I needed it, and it was there.
Excellent. Great. And I want to backtrack too. It sounds like you really like the camaraderie. One of my favorite things about what we do, I spend a lot of time, unfortunately, behind a computer screen, kind of living in my inbox, answering all the different student questions that come in. But one of my favorite parts of our program is live class, because the chat room, right, and the engagement and the discussion. And in the beginning, everyone starts out really proper and formal, and then usually around maybe the live class 3 or 4, someone will use a funny nickname for their Zoom name, and then about halfway through, all these inside jokes come up, and everyone feels comfortable that, number one, they can share the a little bit of nervousness, right? Like excited nervousness, the apprehension, they can share that too. But then everyone, all the humor comes out, all the personality comes out. When people get frustrated, everyone starts venting together, and it kind of just feels like one big group of people kind of all doing it at the same time, taking it together. Yes,
that's exactly how I felt. And it just feels good when you're working homework problems, and you're burning the midnight oil. It's that, you're not alone, and we're all just working hard to better ourselves. if I didn't have that community feel, I would feel more selfish. I would feel like, gosh, is everybody else out there, watching movies, eating popcorn, taking naps? Speaking of which, I was kind of, for the last couple of years, working hard on my FE and PE. I was sitting there the Sunday after I passed my PE. It was about 1 o'clock, and I told my wife, I was like, I'm just really tired. I could take a nap right now. But she started for the last 2 years. I would never take a nap. There's no way I'm going to lay there for 3 or 4 hours of nap when I could study for the PE. It felt good going there, taking my well-earned nap.
No, I bet it did. And I bet you were probably catching up on sleep now and catching up on
Exactly.
all sorts of different things. You got all that time back. Great. What else? So our program, how, obviously, so you were in it for a while when we did the different extended access programs to kind of help people transition and to schedule for the new CBT exam. And, obviously we changed a lot of the live class material to kind of tailor it around the new CBT format. How good of a job did we do? How do you feel that we did preparing you for the CBT exam, whether it's, now having focused just on the reference handbook or, working the new AIT style questions that, if someone hadn't taken the CBT FE exam, a lot of people took it, years ago and it's still paper and pencil. A lot of people are scared of these new AIT questions. How well did we do preparing you for the CBT format in such a short amount of time during that surprise transition period when the paper and pencil exam was canceled?
I feel like it couldn't have went any better. I really do. I'm so blessed that at least they gave us enough warning to know it was going CBT early, because I'd have really, it would have really hurt to go through the whole live class and the last week they announced it. So we couldn't have backed up. But with a live class, working problems, us communicating where in the reference handbook we see these equations, we can all work it together. I felt over prepared for it. I really did. I mean, when you look at having 40 books to take to a PE and they narrowed down to 70 or 80 pages, I told myself, I was like, I literally should know every page like the back of my hand. You shouldn't look at one problem that says, what's the resistance of a ground rod and go, is that in there or not? You should know every equation, at least what's in there, not memorize it, but know it's in there so you can at least search for it. And I feel that's exactly what the live class got me.
Excellent. Good. Happy to hear that. Yeah, I know that I believe it was in August when they announced the cancellation. I want to say late August, 8, 9, 10. So we would have been just in the early stages. I think we probably would have gotten through the circuit analysis live class. We might have already gotten through transformers.
No, it was actually earlier than that.
Was it?
Because it was the very first, it was between our introduction and the circuits class.
You're right.
Because we were like, we're going to talk about this for 30 minutes, and 2 hours later, we're all still talking about it.
You're right. I remember that. Yeah, a lot of uneasiness in the live class chat room that night, and for good reason. Great. So prior to signing up and enrolling in our electricalpereview.com program, do you have any other experience with any other online programs or study courses?
Not for the PE. When I was taking my FE exam, I used another company. They have online qualitative and quantitative problems. And I spent so much time on the FE. I didn't pass my first attempt, just like using electrical PE review. I did feel very prepared when I went and took the test, but unfortunately, I was just studying just extremely outdated material. And I couldn't get that time back. And I mean, I will say it was a complete waste of time. I mean, but once I regathered my information, and there's a reason people say that NCES practice exam is the holy grail. I mean, that's the only information we have from them. And I use the same advice for the PE that I do with the FE, and that's what I tell people. It's like I would work that practice exam 4 to 5 to 10 times. It's never going to be a waste of time.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like the gold standard, right? It's the only thing we have directly from the test makers themselves for us to kind of set our bearings, our sights, and get an idea of what they're expecting. So it sounds like maybe it was a waste of time, really spending a lot of time learning questions that were outdated. And, we won't, we talked about this earlier, but, we're not going to ask you to say the name, but it sounds like it's maybe one of the larger companies that's been around for a while, maybe a name that people are more familiar with. So being a student of ours, now that you've been through our program, you took the PE exam, you passed on your first try. How would you compare, maybe for someone that's thinking of signing up for a review program to help them with the PE exam, how would you compare the service that we provide in terms of quality, content, one-on-one attention, really all the above, compared to your experience with one of the other competitor programs for the FE exam that you just described?
Zach, I'm not exaggerating. It's incomparable. I mean, there's not going to be anybody to answer your questions if you don't understand it. I would get very frustrated when and this isn't just online programs. This is a printed literature where I would work a problem and I couldn't get the answer. I'd look at the answer in the back. I don't agree with how they got it. I would spend 2 to 3 hours going through books. I still couldn't figure it out. I would Google the book's errata. Nothing online. I'd make a post online and somebody go, "Oh, we've been talking about that for 5 to 10 years. Yeah, that problem in that book's wrong." And I go, "Do what?" I just spent 4 to 5 hours researching a problem. And that website was the exact same way of the other company. But at least if I don't understand something, electrical PE review, taking these quizzes, and I will admit every single time I was wrong, I would email and say, "I don't understand, how this answer." And I would get an email back within, 24 to 48 hours with a detailed explanation of what I did wrong. I mean, it's just uncomparable.
Yeah, I like to think of, my full-time job, especially outside of live class. So when we're not having live class, kind of like right now, my full-time job, it's kind of just living in that inbox and just really having those one-on-one conversations with each student as, questions come up or uncertainties, or, every now and then someone catches an error, which I'm always happy to, I like learning stuff new too, or, if there's a small error, it's always, better to correct and send out an announcement. But yeah, most of my time is definitely spent having those one-on-one email conversations. And then when live class starts, we get much more participation from the other students in live class, in the chat room, and the discussion board too. You were pretty active in the discussion board, right? Or live class discussion board. Now, not the live chat room that we use during live class, but the kind of message board, right? How'd you like that? How was the engagement with the other students, and were people friendly? Were they helpful? Did you get a chance to also maybe help others, or how'd you like that? What was that like?
It was definitely a blessing having access to that online forum. I have 3 or 4 different websites I'll use for PE review, to ask questions to help other engineers. But unfortunately, if I need help or if I don't understand something, it might be 2 to 3 days before anybody really comments. And you don't know if the person commenting don't have their PE or got their PE 30 years ago. But that's what I love so much about the message boards is I could communicate on there, and every single person in there is studying like you, putting in hours like you. It's fresh on their mind. And again, it's that community feel that it really does take a lot of stress away. And this is by far the most stressful thing probably an engineer can do.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I want to touch more on something you said. This was my experience as well when I took the PE exam quite a while ago. When either you don't agree with the author's solution, which it happens. Some of these books are, especially some of the third-party practice exams, are pretty dated, and some of them are incorrect. It happens from time to time. Nothing's worse than burning through 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 hours of that time you had kind of dedicated to studying, right? Nothing's worse than wasting that time trying to chase the answer, going through different books, looking online, talking to other people, trying to get in touch with the author. You kind of almost feel cheated because, the only thing you have, I like to say the only currency you have for the PE exam to spend is your time, right? Time spent studying and time spent in that exam room. And, trying to figure out how, an author went from step A to step B when they really left out either, 10 some assumptions because they assumed you read cover to cover. They just assumed that, they didn't need to talk about that, or maybe they made a mistake, it really feels like a waste of time sometimes.
It does. And my personality is the worst for that situation because then I get frustrated and I'm like, oh, now I need a break because I just spent 10 hours chasing that. And it's like, great. Now you wasted 10 hours and you want a break because you're frustrated.
Yeah, you get a little angry. I know I do. And then I don't know about you, but I can't stop thinking about it. It gets stuck in my head. I can't stop thinking about it.
That's the number one disadvantage I say in interviews. And they say, what's your weakness and what's your strengths? My weakness is I cannot drop something. If a 20-year-old engineer comes to me and says, hey, we're grinding this out here, do you know why they put 10 ground rods instead of 5? I can't let it go. I have to figure it out or it'll eat at me until I do.
Yeah, but that's
so it's a blessing and a curse.
I mean, definitely a blessing and a curse because, that's also a quality that makes a great detail-oriented engineer. That's not going to sometimes the smallest details can throw off the whole project. So that's also a great quality. Okay, how about had you not enrolled in our program, how well do you think you would have done on the CBT exam?
I definitely wouldn't have had the qualitative background I had. I can't over exaggerate how nice it is to have all the information you need in one location. When it was paper and pencil, it was still amazing, but I feel now that it's CBT, it's almost a must to try to have all your information in one location. You know, if you're going to take the CBT exam, I think the days of going out and spending 2 to 3 grand on 40 books isn't there anymore. I mean, you could literally have everything you need on electrical PE review. You have your reference handbook, you know, get a copy of the NEC, NESC, and you're kind of ready to rock. And the number one thing the website gave me was the confidence. I mean, an article I read on electrical PE review, you mentioned different pass rate statistics versus how long people studied. And I seen that article early along in my studying, and I can't express to you because I read it top to bottom. And at the end, it says, you know, only a couple of people studied over 300 hours. And it was like, guess what their pass rate was? And I mean, you had my attention. It was like 100%. And I'm the kind of person I read that I was like, well, I mean, if I don't study at least 300 hours, I have nobody to blame but myself. And then when I seen all of the information offered on electrical PE, it'll take some hours if you're going to go through the entire website and work every quiz. And once I did that, I knew I've been at least exposed to everything because I can't express enough to people until you really see every single detailed item on the NCES specification page listed out in electrical PE review. It's hard to imagine how much qualitative stuff is on that test.
Excellent. Yeah, it's I think people underestimate even, you know, the free trial. We try to give away some of our best material. Again, it's just not in everyone's budget. And I understand that. And at the end of the day, you know, we just want to help. So we give away quite a bit in the free trial. And you can kind of poke around and see the areas that are grayed out that are included with a paid enrollment. But even still, yeah, I get emails quite frequently to the same point that people are just blown away by how much information. You know, we've pretty much built a large encyclopedia
Yes.
covering all of the topics on the PE exam, you know, all organized with videos, text, diagrams, illustrations, practice problem solutions, you know, not even, you know, mentioning the live class that then takes everything one step further. It's kind of, I like to call it the battleground. You know, we really find out how well you actually know the subjects. What else? How about this? When you were studying, when you were getting ready, what were the subjects that you liked? What were the subjects that you didn't like? What were the subjects that you found the most difficult to learn? And what were the subjects that you found the most natural or easiest to learn?
The most difficult to learn is definitely, in my opinion, the NEC.
Hmm.
You know, it's the second largest subject on the test, so you can't ignore it. But you could probably study 300 or 400. I mean, I studied over 500 hours and I still didn't feel extremely confident on NEC. I mean, granted, you should be able to size cables and conduit and voltage drop. I mean, you should be able to do that like the back of your hand, but you have no idea what they're going to pull out of there. So that scared me more than anything is the NEC. And it's funny, you think that would be the least stressful because that's the one book they give you. But we all know how much information's in the NEC and everything they can ask you. And I was actually telling my wife she asked me, what do you think the easiest subjects on the PE were? And I said, well, in my opinion, the easiest subject, not on the PE, but for me personally, would have been circuits, power, and power factor correction. And the reason it's the easiest for me is I feel if you're signing up for this exam, that should be your bread and butter. And it should be easy to you. If you're ever at a point when studying for this exam, you're like, man, I don't know, you know, how do I find my magnitude of my magnitude of my apparent power? How do I find, you know, my watts? It's like, if at any time you stumble, I would just stop, backpedal, you know, do the power fundamentals, boot camp, anything you can do. So I made sure I had a solid rock in circuits, power, and power factor correction.
Awesome.
And then I spent most of my time probably on qualitative when it comes to protection. I looked at it as, and it's kind of funny. I went my mind works the exact same way as the how to pass the PE exam of, you know, start with a subject you're good at first to get some confidence. And luckily for me, the FE, the biggest subjects is circuit and power. That was my strong point. So I started with circuits, power on the PE. And after you go through what's easy to you, then start with what has the most questions, which would be protection, NEC. And I felt I couldn't have studied any better.
Yeah, power factor correction is one of my favorite subjects. It always has been, and it's really for the exact reasons you just named. It has a little bit of everything in it, and I find that a lot of light bulb moments start coming up. You know, people really start clicking on the fundamentals that really overlap the core subjects. You know, you're dealing with power fundamentals, how the different power quantities relate to each other, real, imaginary, apparent power, how power factor really changes, right? Your power triangle and how that relates to one another. And then, the circuit analysis aspect, even for simple single line diagram circuit analysis, even just solving for three-phase apparent power, but it kind of really brings everything under one place. And then from there, kind of like you said, starting out in areas that you're comfortable in, everything kind of half overlaps the other subject. So it's like you kind of build that base, and it's like, okay, this subject, it's not as difficult as I first thought, because this subject that I'm really comfortable with, part of it applies to this. So you can kind of, I like that. I like your suggestion of starting where you're comfortable and kind of slowly start branching out.
Exactly how I feel.
And also to touch on, I agree 100% with the NEC. There could be an 8-hour NEC test, and arguably it could easily be harder than the PE exam because, like you said, you don't know what they're going to pull out of it. And I don't know about you, but anytime I'm learning a new part of the code book, I read it and I read it and I read it. And then I try to read every related opinion piece I can find online about that specific section of the code. Because sometimes it feels like you're just chasing your tail. You'll spend time flipping from the index to the table of contents, from the index to the table of contents. And then you find the section that you think like, I nailed it. This is it. The piece of information I'm looking for, it's got to be contained in this paragraph. So you read the paragraph and then it says, check A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, right? So you check all of those. And then one of those says, well, then now you have to evaluate condition 1 or 2. And then wait, there's an exception that could apply to this one. And then make sure you also check, it'll reference a different part of the code to make sure it complies with that. And then when you go to that part of the code, the whole process starts over with bullet points and subheading and stuff like that. So yeah, NEC, it goes without saying, it's its own monster, or it's its own beast on the exam. Did you practice at all with digital versions of the code books before taking the CBT exam?
Yes. Yes, I had the code books beforehand. So when I went to CBT, I knew that would be a huge advantage of, again, you really want to simulate exactly how that practice exam is going to be. And once they announced it was CBT, I never had my hardback NEC book in front of me again, or the NESC. Any question on any practice test, I used just to get more and more practice of the search function. And you start learning. The more practice you put in, the more you learn how to quickly use that search function of. It's funny to go to motors. The table of contents are the tables that have the locked rotor. It was so funny. I know if I type in single in the motor section, hit enter 5 times, it would go down to those tables instead of scrolling through the 100 pages in motor. So I definitely found some tricks by over studying that. I feel saved me a lot of time on the PE.
Excellent. Yeah. I can't imagine having to sit for the CBT exam and not being familiar with accessing that humongous code book without being used to accessing it digitally.
Exactly.
My mind doesn't translate very well from, I'm a book guy. I like physical books. I like to tab. I like to reference. I like to highlight. I like to draw. I like to write notes on sticky notes, stop writing the page. I'm in the habit now of when books that I really like, that I use a lot, I'll spend the money and I'll get the PDF version too. Sometimes it's quick to access it when I know exactly what I'm looking for. It's almost like, the references for the old format paper and pencil. It's like, I know what I'm looking for. I know exactly when I see it, I'll know that it's that. And I just need to write it down. And sometimes I like the PDF copies, but anytime I'm learning something new, I gotta have something tangible I can touch. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you had the chance to use those digital code books. We're definitely recommending it going forward. Everybody, I think both copies are helpful to have. The physical copy, maybe to learn sections of the code for the first time, but go back, solve that same question, a week or 2 today, if it's on your practice problem index, solve that same question, but you can only use the digital version of the code book and see how you do.
Yes.
How about, so you passed the exam, right? You studied for a very long time because the exam was canceled, not once, but twice. You made your way through our complete program and then some. Now that the whole thing's said and done with, what, if you go back in time, what's something that you wish you knew ahead of time?
I feel no matter what you do, you're anybody that asks, I don't have kids yet. I'm waiting until I'm ready to have kids. And the joke is you're never going to be ready. You can wait till you're 20, you can wait till you're 40. I feel the same way about the PE. I have so many friends that are trying to study by themselves. They don't use any online program and they keep pushing the test out. They'll schedule it 3 months out and they'll put in the work. They really will. And it'll be a week till test time. They go, oh man, I ain't ready. I'm going to reschedule. I'm going to push this test out a month or two, because you can now, the CBT. And I wish I knew back then that I wouldn't be ready. But when I found the website, that's another one of the main things that gave me, I keep harping on, is the confidence of knowing I've looked at every single subtopic on this specification page. And I told my wife before I even took the exam, I said, honey, I can't express to you what this exam gave me, or this website gave me, is it gave me the confidence of knowing at least there shouldn't be a word on this test I've never seen before. So I'm telling you, when I took the FE exam, I consider myself just a main power engineer. But on the FE, there's subjects like programming, software development. I'm like, and I would get a question. And the same thing could happen to you on the PE if you're not exposed to it. I mean, you could see a couple of questions pop up there. You're like, I've never seen this word in my life. But I can honestly say now, if I knew back then having this website would give me this much confidence, I'm just glad it paid off.
Great. So it sounds like number one, you'll never feel like you're 100% ready. So you need to really got to put skin in the game, right? I always like to say, when people ask, when should I take it? I always say you need to work backwards. Pick a date, not too far out, not too soon. Pick a date, sign up, put it on your calendar, start studying. Because unless you have a date that you're ready to take, unless you have a date that you're going to take the exam, you're not going to have that sense of urgency that, okay, I got to buckle down. I can't waste time. I can't spend time with friends. I can't stay up late, binge watching, the latest show on Netflix. I got to get up early on the weekends. I got to take it serious. I got to study. So it sounds like if you go back in time, you're never going to be 100% ready. So pick an exam date, shoot for it, give it your best shot. Don't cancel it. Don't get scared, but you got to give it your best shot and find a resource as comprehensive of what we offer.
For sure.
Great. How about what advice, and it's kind of similar to what we just talked about, but what advice would you give an engineer that's watching this, that's getting ready to take the CBT PE exam? What advice would you like to offer?
I have lots of people at work that ask me, what's one thing you can tell me that will help me with this PE? You cannot overstudy. Yeah. If you're looking at it and you go, man, look at me. I had 14 months. Anybody would say you're crazy. Take a year off and really hit it hard 2 months before that exam. I spent 500 hours and 2,500 problems. And even when, I still had the nerves, I wasn't afraid of seeing something I haven't seen, but I was expecting to see something super difficult that I might not remember how to tackle. And you cannot overstudy. If you have, like Zach said, set your schedule, get up early on Saturday and Sunday, work the problems. And if you have different literatures of different practice exams, you'll figure it out quick of easier material versus harder, more technical material. And you can't overstudy. It could be the easier material, building a solid foundation, keep working yourself up. I actually went through the entire electrical PE review program, completely twice. Every single module, I read every single piece of text, watched every video, worked every quiz twice. And I still didn't feel like I overstudied. It's impossible to overstudy for this exam.
Yeah.
So never feel like you're wasting your time. Never feel like, man, I've been studying so long, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over again. You're not wasting time.
Yeah, you cannot underestimate the exam, and you cannot underestimate NCES, their ability to still challenge you and present a problem from just a slightly different angle that you haven't seen before. Yeah, so you can't overstudy. Great. How about what would you like to tell an engineer that's considering help if they're considering signing up for an online program, whether it be us, whether it be someone else? But sometimes these programs can be expensive. Some employers cover them, some employers don't. What would you, if an engineer listening to this right now that wants to get ready for the PE exam, what would you tell them to help them make the decision in terms of, is using an online review course going to be worth it in the long run or not?
Guys and gals, if you're taking this test, you're already an engineer. You've already tackled the FE exam, which is no joke. Our time is worth so much at this point in our lives. Don't waste time without an online program. Don't waste time putting your nose through books, because I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to go through the books. You're going to get stressed. You're going to be like, I've been studying 3 months and I haven't looked at 80% of the material. And again, just having all of the information on electrical PE review in one location. I would just strongly ask everyone to consider an online program.
Excellent. Let's see what else. Anything else you'd like to touch on? I know at the start of the call, you were talking about the practice problem index, but yeah, what else would you like to share?
Like you mentioned, I'd like to just touch on real quick about the problem index. I can't over exaggerate how much it helped me personally. And of course, everybody's brains work differently. That's why we try to expose engineers to so many different things. Some things work for some people it doesn't. Once I really truthfully started using the problem index, I would make my index and I would try not to look at that problem again for at least a week, 7 days. I had plenty of material online, electrical PE review to keep working. I'd go back and look at my problem index, and I would say less than 50% of the time, it's a little embarrassing, but you look at it and you still can't do it. So it's proving that it works, and nothing feels better than a month later when you work it a third or a fourth time and you just hammer it, it.
Yeah, nothing feels better than finally scratching it off the list, especially if it's kind of been there for a while and kind of gets carried over.
And it's public information on NCES's website. But another thing I'd look into is, they mentioned, I forget exactly what the type of problem it's called, but they put in for the FE and the PE, every test they have, they put in, I think, 10 questions that don't count towards you. And I don't want other engineers to stress like me, because I came home from taking the PE and the wife says, well, how do you feel? And I was like, honey, it's very rare I feel somebody can go take that test and be like, easy. That's the easiest thing I've ever done. I've passed that. I left feeling pretty good. But once I remembered on the website, NCS publishes that there's about 10 questions out of 80 that, and they even say they're harder than normal questions to gauge to see if they should include in the test. When I was sitting there thinking, I was like, there's actually only about 6 to 10 problems I really got stumbled on hard. And since I've done the electrical PE review website twice, I put in the time, I put in the work, I was like, I bet those 10 problems were, the 10 problems that's not going to count, that's supposed to be harder than expected. And to my delight, I seen the green sign saying pass, and I really feel that I was ready.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a great point to consider. I believe they're called pretest questions.
That's it. Yeah.
For anyone that's not familiar with that, again, this is straight from the NCES website. Essentially, what they're doing is they're kind of trying out and demoing questions for future versions of the PE exam. So you can expect a handful of these questions that you're going to get, but they don't count for you and they don't count against you. So if you get them right, they don't help your score. If you get them wrong, they don't hurt your score. But you don't know, out of the 80 questions on the test, you don't know which ones are the pretest questions. So of course, you got to take every question as serious, but yeah, don't kind of more to your point, but don't let a handful of really tough, challenging, way out of left field, complicated questions, don't let them scare you. Don't let that frazzle you. Don't let that kind of break your confidence when you're taking the question. And I believe, and this is kind of me reading into it a little bit, but I believe NCES is looking at the performance of engineers that pass the PE exam, and they're looking at their performance on those pre-test questions to evaluate if they should include them in future versions of the CBT PE exam. So yeah, no, great point. Don't let, when you see questions that really shake you up a little bit, take a deep breath. There's a really good chance it could be a pre-test question. You're not sure, so you got to treat it just like any other problem, right? You want to try to get it right. But it could be a pre-test question that's not going to count against your score. Great point, Bill.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bill, hey, first of all, congrats again, right? I know it's got to feel good, right? It still feels like a celebration. That license, right? Once your state board issues you your license number, that license is yours to keep. You get it basically forever, as long as you do your continuing education credits. Every state's different. Here in Florida, actually, mine are due in the next 2 months. I got to knock them out, but they're way easier compared to studying for the PE exam. I usually do mine in a couple of weekends, but as long as you do your continuing education credits, as long as you use your license responsibly, it's yours to keep. So congrats again. I'm sure the wife is just as happy. The whole family get to spend more time with. I'm sure it's an entire family celebration, not just yours.
It is. It's a wonderful accomplishment.
Awesome. Well, congrats again. Thanks for taking the time to do this. It was great kind of getting to connect with you, getting to know you more. I know you're one of the more active students, but it's always fun really seeing face to face, even if virtually. It's always nice meeting face to face and really meeting the person behind just an email address. So Bill, thanks for doing this. Congrats again. And definitely feel free to keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
All right. Bye, Bill.